What if I told you that the man who promised to save America $2 trillion actually cost us more money than any government efficiency program in history? What if I told you I was the congresswoman chosen to oversee that disaster from the inside? My name is Marjorie Taylor Green, and when Donald Trump created the Department of Government Efficiency, I was handpicked to chair the House DOGE subcommittee. I was supposed to be Elon Musk's congressional partner in draining the swamp. Instead, I became the witness to the biggest con job in modern American politics. For 6 years, I gave Donald Trump my loyalty. I defended his vision of making government work for the American people. So when he announced DOGE and put me in charge of congressional oversight, I thought we were finally going to deliver on the promises that got him elected. Cut the waste, fire the bureaucrats, make government efficient. Elon Musk stood before the American people with a chainsaw in his hands and promised to cut $2 trillion from the federal budget. $2 trillion, that's not trimming around the edges. That's fundamentally reshaping how government operates. He called it the greatest efficiency drive in human history. The media ate it up. Conservative influencers celebrated. Trump supporters believed we were finally going to see the swamp drained for real, and I wanted to believe it too. After years of watching government grow bigger and more wasteful under every administration, Republican and Democrat alike, here was someone promising real change. Musk created what he called the wall of receipts, a running tally of every dollar DOGE had supposedly saved the American taxpayer. Contract terminations, grant cancellations, workforce reductions. The numbers kept climbing, hundreds of millions, then billions. The wall showed cut after cut, saving after saving. But as the congressman responsible for oversight, I started asking questions that nobody else was asking. Where exactly were these savings? How were they calculated? What was the actual impact on government spending? That's when things got interesting. When I requested detailed breakdowns of the largest claimed savings, the responses were evasive. When I asked to speak directly to agency heads about terminated contracts, meetings were delayed or canceled. When I demanded to see the actual budget impact data, I was told the information was still being compiled. As someone who spent years fighting for fiscal responsibility in Congress, I know the difference between real cuts and accounting tricks. Real cuts show up in the budget. Real savings reduce government spending. Real efficiency improvements make government smaller and less expensive. What I was seeing didn't add up. The first red flag came when I noticed that many of DOGE's biggest claimed victories were contracts that had already been scheduled to end. Musk was taking credit for terminating agreements that were expiring anyway. That's not efficiency. That's taking credit for the calendar. The second red flag was when I realized that several of DOGE's supposed contract cancellations weren't actually canceled at all. The Defense Department contracts that Musk claimed to have terminated, saving taxpayers billions, they were still active, still being paid, still running exactly as they had before. Then came the workforce reductions. Yes, DOGE did push out thousands of federal employees, but here's what they didn't tell you. The government immediately hired contractors to do the same work at higher rates. We didn't eliminate the work. We just made it more expensive. By the time I started getting calls from sources close to the operation, I knew we had a problem. But the information I was about to receive made it clear this wasn't just inefficiency. This was deception on a massive scale. Sources familiar with DOGE's internal operations reached out to me with documents that painted a very different picture than what the public was seeing. The wall of receipts that Musk was promoting, according to people with direct knowledge of the process, the largest savings claims were simply false. Multiple sources with access to the real budget data confirmed what I was beginning to suspect. Not only was DOGE not saving money, government spending was actually going up. While Musk was claiming billions in cuts, the federal government was spending 6% more than the previous year. People inside the administration started contacting me because they were concerned about what they were witnessing. They told me about budget meetings where real savings were rejected because they would affect programs that Trump wanted to protect. They described a culture where the appearance of cuts mattered more than actual fiscal responsibility. One source with direct knowledge of DOGE operations told me about the process for creating the wall of receipts. Numbers were often estimates. Potential savings were counted as actual savings. Future projected costs were calculated as current cuts. It was designed to create impressive headlines, not real efficiency. The most damaging information came from federal contracting experts who had worked with DOGE teams. They confirmed that the 13 largest savings claims on Musk's wall were all incorrect, all of them. The two biggest items alone, claimed to save $8 billion, were completely false. But here's the part that should terrify every American who cares about constitutional government. This wasn't just about failed efficiency. This was about using the pretense of government reform to settle political scores and reward political allies. Sources inside multiple agencies told me about contracts being terminated not because they were wasteful, but because they were run by companies that hadn't supported Trump politically. Meanwhile, contracts for Trump-supporting businesses were protected even when they were clearly inefficient. I watched as DOGE became a tool for political retribution dressed up as fiscal responsibility. The same man who promised to drain the swamp was using efficiency as an excuse to fill it with his own creatures. When Musk quietly left DOGE in May, the official explanation was that he needed to focus on his businesses. But sources close to the situation told me the real reason. Legal challenges to DOGE's methods were mounting, and Trump's team was concerned about the political liability. By the time DOGE was officially disbanded in November, the damage was done. Not just to the federal budget, which was higher than before Musk arrived, but to the credibility of the conservative movement and the trust of millions of Americans who believed we were finally going to see real reform. The final insult came when I saw the real numbers. After all the promises, all the theatrics, all the chainsaw wielding, DOGE had managed to achieve genuine savings of perhaps $20 to $30 billion. That sounds like a lot until you realize it's less than 0.5% of the federal budget, and even those savings were wiped out by the increased costs from their disruptive methods. We spent more money trying to save money than we actually saved. This is what happens when political theater replaces principled governance. This is what happens when loyalty to a man becomes more important than loyalty to the Constitution. This is what happens when conservatives abandon their values to applaud performance art. I gave Donald Trump 6 years of my political life because I believed he would fight for the American people against the Washington establishment. But DOGE showed me that Trump had become the establishment, just a different establishment, one that cared more about looking effective than being effective. The American people deserved better than Elon Musk's efficiency theater. They deserved real cuts, real savings, real reform. Instead, they got a wall of receipts filled with lies and a government that spent more money while claiming to spend less. The question isn't whether we need government efficiency. We desperately do. The question is whether we're willing to demand honesty from the people who promise to deliver it. Because until we stop rewarding political theater with our applause, we'll keep getting more theater and less real reform. That's why I'm here. Not because I enjoy exposing the failures of people I once supported, but because the Constitution demands better than this. America first demands better than this, and the American people deserve leaders who will tell them the truth, even when the truth is politically inconvenient. The swamp wasn't drained, it was just redecorated, and until we're willing to admit that, it never will be.